we're going to take a look at the ever so spooky diminished scale. And what even is a diminished scale? Well, it's not something that just kind of shrinks your guitar while you play it. So if you don't know what the diminished scale is, you can kind of think of like old horror movies, like the spoof I kind of made in the beginning there, like Alfred Hitchcock, Vincent Price stuff. It's kind of music they commonly used as backdrops to what was going on, and it has that spooky kind of feel to it, although of course it's not the only way you can use it, it's the most common one you'll hear. Now as a scale, it's what's known as a symmetrical scale, and that's because it is based on a series of symmetrically placed intervals. In the case of the diminished scale, you can do it one of two ways. You can start with a half step, so whatever root note you have, you go half step, then the next is a whole step, and then you just keep going half step, whole step, half step, whole step. And that's called the dominant diminished scale. You can flip that if you want and go with a whole step first, so whole step, half step, whole step, half step, and you get the fully diminished scale. Now, for the purposes of this lesson and what I hear more commonly in rock, I'm going to use the dominant diminished scale starting with a half step to explain it to you. It's just what I like better, and it's my channel. I can cry if I want to.
It's my party and I'll cry if I want to.
And if you're not a big classical music fan or player of classical music on the guitar, your first exposure to the diminished scale is probably just borrowing one note from it and adding it to your pentatonic minor scale. You'll hear people call it the blues scale, and you're just throwing what's called the diminished fifth into the scale, and it looks like this. You have a regular pentatonic scale, say an A here. You have the root note. The next tone is a minor third away. Then you have the fourth, the fifth, the seventh, and the ninth. So you add the flat five, the diminished fifth. And that'll be a lot of people's first exposure to this, maybe even hearing like the diminished chord. The next thing you might know it from are like neoclassical players, originally guys like Yngwie Malmsteen, certainly Randy Rhoads. He was one of the biggest purveyors of this scale in the early days of rock guitar. You move up into the 80s, you get a guy like George Lynch. And he's just borrowing again that diminished fifth note from the entire diminished scale and throwing it into the music there to add some interest and tension. All right, let's take a look at the full diminished scale, which is probably more than you're ever going to use, but I want you to know the whole thing, and we'll include tabs with it. I play it 4 notes per string, and I like to play the first note with my first finger and slide up to the second note with the first finger as well, because it puts you in position for the next string. So if we're in the key of A, you have an A sharp, it's 5, 6. And then you have C, C sharp. And this pattern of half step, again, it's symmetrical, so it's half step, whole step, half step, is just going to continue all the way up to the high E string. So again, and my fingers are already in the position for the next note. If you're ending at C sharp, a whole step away from C sharp is a D sharp here, which on the A string is here, and it plays exactly the same. So if I keep going, I'm only going to have something that changes when I go between the third and the second string, because in standard tuning, the way it's tuned. So very symmetrical. And in this case, my first finger is not in the correct spot. I got to jump just that one fret to the octave of the A. And that's your entire diminished scale, half step, whole step. One note I want to make here to you is that in a series of 12 semitones, you can only have 3 diminished keys that you could possibly play in, because at the minor third, the pattern repeats again, right? So if I have 5, 6, 8, 9, if instead I start on the next one, I have 6, 7, 9, 10. If I start on the next one, I have 7, 8, 10, 11. When I get to this one, I start with 8, 9, which was the third and fourth notes when I started on A. So because it's symmetrical, once I get to there, everything's repeating again where it left off in the first one, and you only end up with 3 possible diminished keys that you could be in. Okay, so now I want to give you 3 ways that I would use this scale, grab pieces from it so I'm not just playing that whole thing linearly and not really making music out of it, and I'll include tabs with this below. The first thing that I like to do is to play the triad, the diminished triad, and use that almost like an arpeggio. And when I talk about triads, I'm talking about like the root 3-5 chord triad. So you have like a major triad, the root, major third, fifth, or the root minor third fifth, the minor triad. And if this stuff's kind of foreign to you when I'm talking about majors and minors and stuff to do with the major scale, diatonic scales as they're called, I do have a series on that, the modes and how it all works. I'll link that above here. You might want to check that out if you're a little bit lost with this. That said, what I like to do is take this diminished arpeggio, which is the root, the minor third, and the flat 5, the diminished 5, and build my way from the low string, low E, up to the high E. And I'll include tabs and a riff as an example here. It's a fun one to do to lead up to a solo. And then drop into your minor scale from there. All that is the symmetry of the root, minor third, flat 5. When I get to the flat 5, it's my new root, minor third, flat 5. That's the new root, the new root, new root, whatever. Root, minor third, flat 5, and then I just jump out of it at the end there. Second way I like to use it is to mix up a little bit of that 4-note per string linear stuff with what I just did. So like on the beginning intro, goofy horror thing I did there. So I'm mixing that little buildup of the triad and the arpeggio into a 4-note per string melody type thing. The third thing I like to do is probably more common, like that blues type of scale where you just add the flat 5 in, mix it with the pentatonic and use it in a very flashy kind of way. Not the standard blues, like just a... I'm talking about something a little bit more flash, and that would be to take something like a pull-off pattern. I'll throw some tabs for this on. And then drop back to the flat 5. So here, if I'm in the key of E, B is the 5th, B flat's the flat 5, the diminished 5. So it's a fun riff. I've used it before on this channel. All right, so there you have it. That's the full diminished scale and how you play it. There's 3 examples of how I like to use it myself. And if you have any questions or comments, if you have any cool ideas of your own that you come up with the diminished scale, share them with me in the comments below. I always want to see what viewers of these videos are doing, what kind of music you guys are making. And until next time, guys, keep making great music. Hey friends, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. It makes the whole world better.